Today is what is becoming a beautiful Wednesday. We're at the Iron Bridge in Anola, Pennsylvania. We're looking south into Anola Yard on Norfolk Southern, and we see a brace of General Electric units of all different types, 3 different types. Looks like they're making up a train. This has always been a busy spot on the north end of Anola Yard. There's a lot of yard movements and trains arriving and departing the yard from the west and the north. Here we got an ES44DC followed by a C44-9W, and behind that is an ET44AC. A lot of GE variety, but all GE. We got Interstate 81 traffic going overhead here. This is a great railfan spot. They have portals to put your cameras through inside the chain link fences. And looking to the north from the Iron Bridge, you can see Blue Mountain in the background. The tracks going off. Freight trains out of here go either east on the Harrisburg line or heading down to the Lurgan branch. They go north on the Buffalo line or west on the Pittsburgh line. And backing a train up is another GE variety, an ES44AC. Looks like he might be coupling to that consist on the yard track there. He might be a DPU on a westbound freight. Looks like a crew member is delivering the train's paperwork. Should be leaving pretty soon. Yeah, Anola Yard is a famous Pennsylvania railroad yard. Used to be served heavily by steam, and diesel, and electric back when the lines east of the yard were electrified. Turning out to be a nice day today. The next couple of days should be beautiful. Sunny, warm, low humidity. I'm all alone on this bridge. In fact, the name of this town is Anola, and Anola spelled backwards is alone. And this one train is leaving the yard with his DPU helper cut in, an ES44AC number 8128. Train is finally on the move, the one with the 3 different types of GE units. Give you a little lesson in General Electric locomotives here. Lead unit 7531 is an ES44DC, originally delivered as an ES40DC, but they upgraded the horsepower. It's the first GEVO locomotive type the railroad got. To meet the low emissions, you can note that thick radiator in the back. Now the second engine is a very common locomotive type, the C44-9W. Used to be C40-9W, but they upgraded those. Those are very common, they call them catfish. This third unit, you'll note the shape of the radiator is sort of triangular. That's the ET44AC to meet the Tier 4 emissions, and to meet the stringent emission standards, the radiator has to be redesigned. They're very common on Class 1 railroads today. The C44-9W, a lot of them are being rebuilt into AC44C6Ms with AC traction motors. 3 different radiator types, you can see them. That train has a lot more ties than I have in my bedroom closet. And this train with the DPU is still working here in the yard. This DPU is an ES44AC. That was was the second type of Gevo that the NS got. Once they got those engines, that started them permanently down the road for AC traction. NS, unlike CSX, well, they have a lot of General Electric locomotive types on their railroad, but they also have a lot of General Motors units on their roster, happily. Probably my least favorite locomotive on Norfolk Southern is the C40-9W, now C44-9W, and they're being rebuilt into the AC44 C6Ms. Those engines, there's over 1,000 of those things. Very common locomotives, rather uninspiring, and locomotive crews weren't crazy about them. In fact, I remember distinctly talking to one NS engineer who worked the Harrisburg, New Jersey pool, and I asked him what he thought of the C40-9Ws, and he just looked at me and said, if I had nuclear explosives on me, I would blow every single one of them up. He detested them. And here, switching the yard, are a couple of SD40Es. Those are former Conrail SD50s that were rebuilt at Juniata. These engines served in helper service in Altoona for about 10 years, but they've recently been displaced by SD70 ACUs. Looking down the throat of an ES44AC. He might be finally leaving, I think. The other freight that was here with the 3 different types of GEs, that was headed up the Buffalo line because I heard him blowing for the railroad crossing at Rockville on the other side of the Rockville Bridge. This most likely is a train headed west on the Pittsburgh Line. And it's a joy to watch these SD40Es working for a living here. that long westbound with the DPU is finally out of here. Huge train. That's precision scheduled railroading for you. This Railfanning bridge has been a Railfanning hotspot for many years. Years ago, it was a very old girder bridge with low fences. It's a little hard to shoot video through this fence, but handling an iPhone is pretty easy. And this is the run-through track, which runs on the east side of Anola Yard. It's used by run-through trains, mostly coal trains. This is an empty coal train with a C44-9W and an ET44AC. They're arriving from the Rockville Bridge direction. There are a couple of General Motors units here. One of them looks like a road slug. Most unusual unit, that leader. It's a GP59E. This might be a transfer run from Harrisburg across the river. And the SD40Es are backing this cut of cars up into a different track in the yard. If you want it done right, let General Motors do it. GM, great muscle. And here come the SD40Es coming back on the ladder track. comes an arriving train with more GEs. ES44 DC on the front. And two more C44-9Ws. Now I take it back. This one is one of those AC44 C6Ms. They were formerly C44-9Ws, but were converted to AC traction. GEs just don't turn me on the way General Motors engines do. And I've been here a couple of hours now, and you pretty much have seen all the different types of General Electric road units that the Norfolk Southern runs these days. And nearby to the Iron Bridge is a well-known Railfan B&B, the Bridge View Bed and Breakfast. It's right alongside the Susquehanna River with a great view of the Rockville Bridge, the longest stone arch bridge in the world. And there it is. You know, I often wondered if this place really does like rail fans, because I was here about, 8 to 10 years ago, just pulled in the parking lot just to take a couple of pictures of this beautiful place, maybe catch a video of a train going over the bridge. And the provider there pretty much told me to get lost since I wasn't a guest. I thought we rail fans were a fraternity. We all treat each other good. And to get another view of this magnificent stone arch bridge from a boat launch just north of it. It's on the non-sunny side of the bridge, but you can see its gargantuan size. At that end is Rockville interlocking. The Buffalo line splits off from the main and heads up the east side of the Susquehanna River up towards Sunbury. 132, we've moved further west on the Pittsburgh Line at Perdix, Pennsylvania, in time to catch a couple of hot trains passing each other. The first train with all the J.B. Hunt containers on it was 20K, en route from 63rd Street Yard in Chicago to Croxton. And that train disappearing off to the west is 21M. That's the NS equivalent of the old Conrail TVLA symbol. Very long train, carries lots of UPS business between Croxton and Chicago and West Coast connections. I should note that NS is a big customer of J.B. Hunt. J.B. Hunt started the intermodal revolution with his trucking company. He negotiated with Michael R. Haverty of the Santa Fe and put his trailers on his trains. Now they've evolved to containers, and poor Mr. Hunt didn't live to get to see this business sprouting. He fell on the ice, cracked his head open, and died years ago. And they keep coming at 138, another eastbound, Intermodal. Intermodal's big business on Norfolk Southern. And that train by, a very long train, was number 294 out of Chicago to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. He had an SD70 ACE mixed in with that GE lash-up. And more J.B. Hunt containers, very prominent. You'll see a lot of them on this railroad. And this gem of a building is the old PRR station in Duncannon, Pennsylvania, further up the line a few miles. It was built in 1902. Serves a cable TV company today. Train that I didn't get to catch the end of was Hotshot 21M, en route from Croxton to Chicago with BNSF connections, and 4 big GEs powering it. The train I identified at Perdix as 21M was actually 21J from Harrisburg to Chicago. Both of those trains carry UPS business. This view in front of the Duncannon station is magnificent. Looking at the Pittsburgh Line in the foreground and the mighty Susquehanna River. On the other side of the river is Highway 22, 322. Also on the other side is the NS Buffalo Line, which sees limited traffic compared to this Pittsburgh Line. And right upstream a little ways is the beginning of the Juniata River. You're definitely stepping back in time when you go to Duncannon, Pennsylvania. Any minute I expect to see Chuck Connors come out with his rifle. And we're further west of Duncannon at the quiet hamlet of Aqueduct. Nice quiet country crossing here. Looking west from this crossing at Aqueduct, you'll notice how straight the right-of-way is. There aren't too many straight stretches on this serpentine NS Pittsburgh Line. This used to be the Pennsylvania Railroad Middle Division. And when you're riding trains back in Pennsy days like the General, the Broadway Limited, the Spirit of St. Louis, going through Pennsylvania west of Harrisburg to Pittsburgh, you negotiate an awful lot of curves. If you're trying to go to sleep, it's probably not very easy, twisting and turning. You need those little buffers on the side of your bunk bed to keep you from falling out. And I rode with my dad once from New York to Fort Wayne, Indiana on the Broadway Limited, and I was in the top bunk, and I was getting tossed around quite a bit going through Pennsylvania. Now, the New York Central, Pennsylvania Railroad's arch rival, never hesitated to insult the Pennsylvania at any opportunity. In the New York Central's timetables, they used to advertise about their sleeping car services between New York and Cleveland and Detroit and Chicago. They would always brag that on the straight level, water level route, you can sleep. They put those words in big black letters. Pennsylvania didn't appreciate it. New York Central and the Pennsylvania never really got along. They put their heads together and merged and became the Penn Central. It became the biggest financial disaster up to that time. They just couldn't get along. We got a westbound at 313. Amtrak Pennsylvanian. Amtrak Pennsylvanian en route from New York to Pittsburgh. The only passenger train on this line. Another westbound at 320. Intermodal. Didn't get the symbol. That might have been 23M out of E-Rail headed for Chicago. Had a lot of Hub Group containers on board. The train was powered by more GEs. I've been seeing a lot of GEs on these road trains. Shades of CSX. Had a C44-9W and one of those AC44 C6M. And at 4:13 p.m. I can hear a familiar sounding GEVO horn of a later GEVO model. Got an eastbound train approaching the crossing here at Aqueduct. It's a beautiful spot. Judging by the sound of it, I would say that's one of those ET models. Beautiful afternoon. Nice breeze. I've been waiting for that one. That was NS train 590, an eastbound loaded coal train out of the Monongahela coal fields. Sure enough, he had an ET44AC on the point, and the second unit was one of those DC to AC commemorative conversion units, the 1800. It's an SD70 ACC, rebuilt from an SD70 number 2537 by Progress Rail in Muncie, Indiana. We're about less than a mile west of our last location at Pennell's Church Road crossing. There are a number of rural farm crossings in this area. As you can see, it's turned out to be a gorgeous afternoon. Nice dry breeze. And this box here, SIP, I'm not sure what that means. 123.3, well, that's the mileage from Philadelphia. And we have a westbound Intermodal approaching at 4:54. This might be train 21T that runs out of Harrisburg all the way out to Kansas City, Missouri. Heading off westbound. He's got a long way to go before he gets to his final destination of Kansas City. And long trains are the norm with precision scheduled railroading on Norfolk Southern. And I'm sure J.B. Hunt is up in heaven smiling at that train. Eastbound at 5:07. Sounds like there's some General Motors units in that lash up. Wow, that was a precision scheduled railroading train if there ever was one. Leader was an SD70 ACE, and he had a ES44 AC DPU helper on the middle of the train. I did get some help from a local rail fan on what this SIP means. It means signal indication point. It has something to do with the cab signals in the locomotive. That enormous train that just passed by had 806 axles on it, per the local dragging equipment detector here. Ooh. A little ways further west at the Brett's Lane crossing, another unprotected crossing on the straightaway. This area is called Lash's Run. And we got an eastbound at 517, and this has been pretty fluid today. It's hard to identify these intermodal trains. I'm not hearing any radio transmissions too clearly. But that had a lot of steamship company containers on the rear of the train. Front of the train was loaded with domestic containers, the usual EMP, Hub Group, and JB Hunt. Looks like we have a westbound manifest freight at 5:58. very big trains. The westbound, I'm not sure what that was, but it had a large cut of auto racks on the rear end. Might have came out of the port of Wilmington with those cars, Wilmington, Delaware, or maybe Doremus Avenue in New Jersey. The eastbound was train 20Q, double stack train en route from Chicago to Morrisville, Pennsylvania. And the last of the 4 country crossings here around Lashes Run is the Short Road Crossing. Probably the prettiest of them all. This post gives you the milepost, 124.4, measured from Philadelphia. We're near the west end of that straight piece of track that started at Aqueduct about 2 miles or so to the east. Eastbound at 629. That's one of the hottest eastbounds on this line. That's train 20W. Runs between Chicago and Croxton, New Jersey. It connects with BNSF. A lot of West Coast traffic on that.